So, just gonna wait a few minutes for you, uh, amazing humans to come on. In the meantime, thanks for kicking off season 3 of The Artist Speaks. Um, Super duper glad to have you guys back. So we're just gonna wait a few minutes for everyone to come on in. If this is your first time, well, I'll just wait a few minutes for you guys to come on while I send out the alerts. Yeah, I will do that now. Send out all of the alerts so that everyone knows that we have started, that we have begun. While I'm doing that, how is everyone doing? Did you do anything fun today? Did you get to rest? Did you get to laugh and joke or spend time with family? Or did you start planning for whatever festivities we have for moms tomorrow, since tomorrow is Mother's Day? What has your day been like so far? Let's change the settings on here. Edit audience to public. And then that should take care of this. Okay, great. So if this is your first time catching the Artist Speaks broadcast, my name is Hannah Love from Love More Music, the CEO and founder, and I am a vocal and worship coach. I go into different worship settings, both corporate and intimate, and look at what the churches are doing and then offer tools and tips and tricks to fix or resolve issues that are found. One of the ways that we do this is by having a podcast, right? In the podcast, you have conversations with, or I have conversations with different worship leaders, hear their heart, hear what excites them, what motivates them, what pushes them, what drives them. And you get to ask them questions, essentially pulling back the veil. Oftentimes, we don't get to actually have conversations with the worship leaders. And so they're kind of like this far away person that we think is holier than thou, when in reality, they are as human as we are, right? So this allows for us to build relationships with our worship leaders, ask our worship leaders questions, understand their struggles and what they go through, and learn their passion and really understand their why. There are a few adjustments. This is season 3, so we're back. If you have been blessed by season 1 and season 2, please feel free to share. Please feel free to tag a friend and invite a friend so that they can be a part of the conversation as well. We are on Facebook as well as on YouTube. So feel free to share, feel free to invite, feel free to tag your pastors and your fellow worship leaders and join in on the conversation. If you would like to bless, I don't think I've ever done this before, so this feels weird to say, but if you would like to bless, or if you would like to sow, insert eye roll here, there is the Cash App information there. Feel free to donate if you feel led to. It all goes towards getting more speakers and additional speakers and just doing more of the God-led work, right? There is also an additional change. Some of you may be on our subscriber list, where you will get an update when we are about to go live. You will get an update for new events that are coming up. If you want to subscribe, or if you want to be a part of, you are going to text the word update to, and I'm going to give you the number, and I'm going to also drop the number in the chat. You are going to text update. Hold on, let's get this number. to 718-808-8361. Again, that's 718-808-8361. If you want to get your updates, your new events that are happening, new speakers that we're interviewing, you can text your updates there. Now, if you want discounts, if you want codes, if you want coupons, I need your email address, because coupons only go out with your email address. 15% off, 10% off of our services. That only happens when you email us. But if you text us, then you get to know what's happening next. And the last announcement before we bring our season 3 guest on is we are doing a worship tour this summer. So we're going to be having different worship events throughout the 5 boroughs. A Vision of Heaven, which is worship and painting, Love Letters, which is worship and journaling, and then Somatic Worship, which is worship through movement, where you will learn the different ways that you can worship God through painting, through journaling, and through stretching. And just getting our bodies moving, because exercise is very important, right? These events are all free to you. So you can look out for the flyer that will be coming out. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us on Twitter. So you can feel free to look out for those events. They are free to you, but spaces are limited. And without further ado, we are going to bring up gospel and recording worship leader and gospel recording artist Diane Malloy. Hey Diane,
Hi.
how are you today?
I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I want to thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for sacrificing and for being willing to share your heart to those that are willing to hear from you. And so, without further ado, can you tell us a little bit about who you are? Just a brief introduction.
Okay. Well, everybody, I am just someone that loves God. I love people and I love music. And I try to just, share all of that with whoever God puts in my path and whoever will listen. Basically, that is who I am and who I keep on striving to be and show.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Can you tell us a little bit about the role that you play in the worship service?
Okay, so I am one of the praise and worship leaders for a local church in the South Bronx. And my role is just to invoke the people to worship God. And I do that on a not a weekly basis, but a monthly basis. I join that congregation and lead worship there.
Awesome. What are some, I know this isn't one of the questions. What is a
Okay.
challenge that you've had to overcome when you stepped into the role of worship leader?
Uh, okay. Well, in general, a challenge when I first started is was I would say probably being the youngest on the team. I was pegged to join an all adult praise and worship team when I was about 16. So that was really a challenge because I wasn't sure that I actually belonged there, but God thought otherwise. So yeah, I would say that that was probably my biggest challenge in the beginning.
Awesome sauce. All right. When did you said that you first joined the worship team at 16? Uh,
Yeah.
was that the first time that you took leading worship seriously, or did it happen a little bit sooner? And what was that journey like for you?
Yeah, that was actually the first time I took leading worship seriously. I Wow. So the whole story behind it was, I had grown up in church. I was at my childhood church for many years, grew up there, and then when I turned 16, the a lovely woman who was in charge of the praise and worship team, she basically saw something in me because I had been in the choir, I had been in the children's choir, Had a couple of my first little solos there and all that good stuff. The first, um, and from then she saw something in me. I guess it was a seriousness that I took about God and about singing his praises at that time that was kind of unique to maybe a young person. Um, and she just basically took me under her wing on the team, and we just kind of went from there. But that was the first time like I really um, began to take leading seriously. I was always, a part of, like I said, the choir and stuff like that, but I never had to, lead people in worship, and be one that someone looked to do that type of thing. So yeah, that was basically the first time that I was like, okay, this is a whole new world, but I'm gonna try my best.
All right, so you started leading at 16. That was kind of like the first time you were thrown into the fire, per se. At what
Mhm.
point in this journey did you know that you were actually called to lead worship?
Yeah, so basically, um, at first I didn't know that I was called. Like I said, I was like, I don't know anything about leading, but if you see something in me, then I guess I'll try to, join and live up to that. But when I first began to see the impact of me being a part of that team, um, you know, through the services and the commentary, that sometimes you get as a worship leader after the service, like, hey, that song really blessed me, or what you had to say really blessed me, it
Mhm.
touched my heart, things like that. Like, it made me really start to see that, like, the important part that I was playing in the role that I did on Sunday mornings. So it made me see that there was indeed, a calling on my life. And then from there, the ability to also just be able to lead folks in worship by myself at times. There were periods of time that, there was no team, but it was just me that was called upon. And when it's only you can't really hide behind anyone
Mhm.
else. It's either you have it in you, or you don't. And every time, that I was fortunate to touch that mic, something different just happened. Like, um, innately, I am a very introverted person.
Hmm.
I'm very, yeah, you ask anybody, I'm really laid back, really chill. I don't really talk a whole lot. So sometimes interviews like this, it's like, oh wow. you know? Um, but just seeing what God would do with me in those times of even when I was just by myself, it really like began to open up my eyes and say, yeah, like there's definitely something to this. There's definitely a call here.
Excuse me, you said you're an introvert. How do you balance your introverted moments when you're stepping into a role that almost expects you to be bubbly, right? Like, as worship leaders, we have to turn to your neighbor, and we're in everyone's faces, and there's this level of, like, for lack of a better word, aggression that comes behind what we do, especially if we're in the moment and Holy Spirit decides to go and just sit. There's a power, there's an assertiveness, there's an aggression that happens. But this literally goes contrary to your DNA as a person that's like, I peopled enough today. I really don't
Woo!
want to people anymore. I would love to go home and curl in my bed with a cup of hot tea and be fine, but I can't not people because the role that I'm in expects me to people with everyone after worship. So after you've peopled and after you've done the thing, how do you balance and how do you like restore and rejuvenate yourself? Or even how do you set up a boundary where you're like, I love y'all, but I'm done peopling today. I'm going to not people at home. What does that balance look like for you?
Okay, so let me take it back a little bit because I'm a different type of introvert. Like, I'm an introvert that, like, some we introverts, we get a lot of slack, and people say like we don't like people, we're mean, all of that. Like, I'm not that type of introvert, if there is that type. I'm an
Mm-hmm.
introvert that, like I said, I love people. Like I really do like people. But being true to being an introvert, yes, it's true. I have like my fill that after that I cannot people anymore. So I just try to be honest with myself and where I'm at. Like I try to do what God is telling me to do in that moment. And then after that, it's like, okay, nothing more. Like I don't have to be the one that's always talking and leading or any of those things. Like I can go right back to just my quiet self. I can say peace be with you and go right out the door. Not rush, obviously, try to connect with people, even minister afterwards, if I feel so led to do and the moment calls for it. But also just knowing to be authentic to myself. That when I feel that, yeah, it might be time to go or change sceneries, after worship services. Like I'm known to kind of have like some me time after on a Sunday afternoon,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Get my favorite thing to eat or, wind down, kick up my feet, so that's basically what, I try to do. There has to be some type of balance for me.
Absolutely. It's funny because most worship leaders, I think, with the exception of like one or two, are like, I'm actually an introvert. And the responses you get from the viewers are like, really? Yeah, most of
Yeah.
us, we love you because Jesus said we're supposed to. Sometimes we don't, we
Oh
don't,
my.
we don't want to be around you. Sometimes we want to be alone, but that's not an option that we have because we have some people around y'all and y'all are exhausting.
Oh man. But like I said, I'm both though, Like
Hmm.
I'm a little different breed of introvert, like, so I guess because of that, like it kind of works for me. Like I can go, with you to for a certain distance, but after a while I'm like, okay, yeah, it's time to
Yeah,
reel it
yeah.
back in.
As
Yeah.
is most is what makes us introverts is that we recharge alone, right? Not that we don't
Yeah.
like you or we don't love you. It's just when we need to recharge, we prefer to do it alone or with a select two or three.
Oh,
Whereas
come
for the
on, two or
extrovert,
three gathered.
whereas for the extrovert, they recharge around a bunch of people. The introvert is like, how? I need to build up energy to be around more than five people at a time.
Basically, this is my life. So yes, I agree. Yes and amen.
Yes. Okay. So here is one of my favorite questions to ask because it shows a little bit of like the personality of the worship leader. So, what is a music moment or a worship moment in your 16th year and onward where you learned the most, that confirmed that you were on the right path, that was your most embarrassing moment, and that was your favorite moment?
Okay. Whew. All right. That's a lot. So, okay. So what was the first one again?
Learned the most.
Okay. I think when I learned the most is, like I said, when I had to do it alone. There was a season in my childhood church where the folks that used to be on the praise and worship team, they were no longer doing it. So it's like there was no one but me left. And
Mhm.
that is the season that I feel like I learned the most because really had to lean on everything that I had learned up until that point. And also, I just had to heavily lean on God about, even, what He wanted me to say, how He wanted me to minister, what songs to choose, um,
Mm.
how to make it effective when, the congregation is used to having more than one person, how to lead and also sing the melody, like how to exhort but come back to the main part of the song. Like that season taught me so much, and it really confirmed like that there was definitely a call. And then the second one was,
Confirm that you're on the right path.
yeah, confirming that I was on the right path was the fact that I was able, to do something like that's a huge task.
Mm,
To do worship by yourself consistently like that. And I did that for quite some time there. And even when I moved on to the church that I presently do worship, there were a couple of years where they only had one person a Sunday to lead worship, and I was that one person again, by myself. So it just confirmed that every time that I went, that God was with me, that He gave me something to say, that He gave me the ability to lead His people, and to be a blessing. So that just confirmed to me, um, that I was definitely on the right path. And like I said, when you would hear the feedback that you get from folks to say, that something you said or did touch them, or where you would visibly see, someone become emotional or tear shed or something like that, So it all of these things just, showed me that I definitely was on the right path. And
mm.
the third one, I think you said, what was the embarrassing thing that happened? Is that
Uh,
what it was?
yep, yep, yep. It's my favorite question. Your most
Okay.
embarrassing moment.
All right, guys. So I think you may be hearing this for the first time live anywhere. The most embarrassing thing um to date as a singer anyway, that happened to me was when this was actually a choir moment. So I was, singing in the choir, and I was in the mic, and I let out a light burp in the microphone while I was singing, and that was so embarrassing. But I don't think anyone heard it. Like, it was very light, but I heard it and was petrified, mortified, that it happened. But I don't think anybody else, yeah, heard it. It was during a season where they were making the choir like fast before service. So like my stomach was rumbling, I had gas in my stomach, no food eaten. So, you know, I guess that did kind of happen. So definitely the most embarrassing.
As much as I love choirs, and I do, I am very biased and partial to choirs.
Okay.
That is the worst thing that they would force choirs to do. Every third Sunday, we're fasting until we're singing. Why? I work best on a full stomach. Tea, bread,
Oh
and butter me,
man.
please. Thank you.
I understand. I understand because immediately following morning service, I would be in the vestibule, eating a biscuit with
Something.
bacon, because my church made some bomb breakfast in the morning too. So I would buy it and then save it until it was after, and then I would eat it there. But anyway, yeah. So that was definitely the most embarrassing thing. But
Ooh,
shh, don't tell nobody. Don't
I
tell
won't.
nobody.
Girl, I was
Okay.
tight lip.
All
And
right.
what is your favorite moment?
Oh, wow. Okay. This has got to be. I thought about this. This is my favorite moment. Um, I was um at another church that I was considering joining after I had moved on from my childhood church after getting married. Um, and I was there, some of the people knew me because the pastor there, he used to be one of the youth pastors at my childhood church.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew that I had led worship before and was a singer. And it just so happened, I think this was like it might have been like a Easter Sunday or something, and the praise team, they actually were running late. And I was in the audience and in the congregation, and he was like, "Hey B, it's getting a little late. Can you sing?" And I was like, "Oh, okay, all right." So I got up there and I sang and led worship. And as I began to lead worship, there was a little cross that was behind me on the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and then I began to sing, and I kid you not, I sang, and I guess I was so much in the spirit that, not crazy, but just in the presence in worship, and I sang, and I totally had turned my whole body around until I faced that cross. And I was singing with my eyes closed to the cross. And then I opened my eyes and saw what I did. And I didn't know how I had gotten turned around. But
Mm-hmm.
I just thought that that was so like wonderful and so very symbolic. And a great example, I think, to show people that we're always to look to God, look to the cross in worship.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like one of my favorite moments to this day. Like I could never forget. I still don't know how I got turned around, but yeah.
It happens. It you and Jesus were having a moment.
Yeah.
It happens.
Yeah.
All right. So here is a question. As a worship leader who has sang in different spaces, conservative, non-conservative, across different denominations, right? As an artist, you're or an artist and worship leader, you're not just singing in your home church or in your network of churches, right? You out there. So other people know where you are and they know who you are, right?
Mhm.
How do you honor Holy Spirit when he comes in the room? What is your view and your perspective on his role in the service? And what do you do when you're in a service where an organic flow and response to you might not be an organic response and flow to the congregants? For example, you might be in a space where you speak in tongues, but the congregation does not, or in a space where you're flowing prophetically, like we gave you 3 songs, sing your 3 songs, and sit down. So, how do you
Mhm.
navigate when Holy Spirit comes in the room and wants to do his thing? And how do you feel that as worship leaders, the Holy Spirit should be honored in space that belongs to him?
Okay. Um, I always go by this. In my home church as a child, they used to always say like the spirit is subject to the prophet. Um, and it's it's basically saying like God will move, um, but like there's a part that you play in it, um, that that has to be very sensitive to the moment.
Mm,
um because for instance, let's take it back to the that moment, that my special moment where I had turned around to the cross. That was a moment that, God was doing something obviously very personal for me in that moment.
mhm,
um but the spirit doesn't always move like that, so we have to be sensitive to how the spirit is moving. Like, just, and also too, we have to know that some things that we feel, how God is moving, is it, some things he's speaking to us sometimes, but it's not necessarily for us to say. Sometimes it's for us to be aware that this
mhm,
is happening, or that he is here, that he wants to do something, but it's not always for us to be overtaken and overcome with so much emotion, that we cannot fulfill the assignment, for that house, for that moment. Um, yeah, and I think that we have to be very conscious of that. Some moments, like you said, it can be a moment where you just go off and you start speaking in tongues. But there's moments and situations where the moment is not necessarily calling for that, and you have to just be sensitive to that, because the people there, they may not need you to do something that you feel to do.
mm,
They may need something else, and God may be asking you to give a different aspect of your gift in that moment. And I feel like knowing when to do that is is something special in and of itself. It is also a sacrifice of praise, knowing when to do that as well. Yeah, so that's basically where I lie with that. There's times where also like, I sing other places that are not necessarily churches. But I know who I am at the end of the day, and I know the call and assignment on my life, and I know that even folks who are not necessarily, in the church, they may need ministry in that moment, but they may just need it to look a different way. They may just need me to smile before I sing my song. They may need me just to crack a joke because they've been so burdened down in the week. They may need me to, after I'm finished, not to run out because I'm an introvert, but to stay back and, and greet them. There's so many ways that we can minister, and so many ways that God might try to lead us. And if we're just locked into just one thing, we're really being a little too narrow-minded for a great big God. That's my opinion.
I think one we're subject to the spirit, not the other way around, is so important because a lot of times worship leaders come in with an agenda, whatever this agenda is, and they put their agenda of Holy Spirit's leading. So, say their agenda is prophetic worship. If that is how you flow, that's dope. Do the
Hmm.
thing God has called you to do, but you might not be able to do that at a funeral.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There's time and place where certain
Hmm.
things are exercised. I can pick up a chair, I can pick up 5 chairs, but should I? So I
Mm.
can
Hmm.
flow prophetically, I can speak in tongues, but would that actually do more damage in this moment?
Yeah.
Or would it be wiser for me to just go in, sing the 1 or 2 songs that I'm called to sing, and leave? You get
Hmm.
called back when you honor the house and you honor the
There
house's
you go.
request, right? So
Hmm.
if they say, Hannah, you have 15 minutes, you go up there and you do what you need to do in
Hmm.
15 minutes and you sit down. Whatever
Hmm.
it is that you need to do, you have to honor that time. So I think it's so important that you said the we are subject to the spirit, as in where the spirit is bending, that's where we bend.
Hmm.
And you also said that there's restraint, there's a level of self-control. You might want to go here, but is this the right moment? Holy Spirit not gonna have you
Hmm.
out here looking like a fool, and he's not
Yeah.
gonna have you out here looking crazy. So if you are so excited to do something and he's like, actually that was for you, that wasn't for
Hmm.
you to release to them, because
Yeah.
while you are leading people to worship, you are also worshiping.
Hmm.
And in that moment of worship, God is going to speak directly to you. And he's also going to speak through you to the people. And the worship leader has to be sensitive enough to know the difference. Is this for me, or is
Hmm.
this for me to release to them? Right?
Absolutely.
That's very important.
Yeah, there's a dual thing that's happening when we lead worship. Like you said, we are actively in worship as ourselves, but we are also leading other people. And what does a good leader do? They don't leave anybody behind. Like, I'm not just gonna go off on a tangent and leave you behind. I'm to lead you. I'm to guide you so you know what path to follow. So we can't, and leaders can't be too far ahead. You ever been driving and you don't know your way, and the person says, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I'll lead you in my car, just follow me." But then they go mad fast and you get lost,
Right.
like how are we to get to our
That's
destination
good.
if we don't slow down enough to let the people be able to follow? But that's another topic for another day.
That's such a good analogy. We get excited, right? We're just like, oh, I want to go pew 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 pew, and in
Hmm.
our
Hmm.
excitement, we go pew 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 pew, and the
Yeah,
congregation is.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
sitting in a worship set, and the worship leader is literally singing all of their favorite songs all at the same time.
yeah.
And it's
Mm.
like, I can see this is your favorite, but you lost me. Or if the worship leader is singing a song that no one in the congregation knows and they didn't take time to introduce it properly, now you're all over the place and the congregation is like, Well,
Yeah.
happening
Mhm.
here? I'm lost. So that was a good
Yeah.
analogy. I'm in the
Yeah.
car and I'm just follow me, but I'm not actually letting you follow me. I've just driven off and now
Yeah.
you can't find me in the cars.
I mean, the vehicle can go to 0 to 100, but should you? Like, you know?
Right. Is that safe? Are you putting your life in jeopardy? Is
Yeah.
this a wise
Yeah.
thing to do? Okay.
Absolutely.
Here is another question which I added recently. Um, these two questions I added recently. When you started leading praise and worship, you were 16. And
Mhm.
as young as she looks, she is not 16.
I am not 16, guys.
Okay. This is a whole adult. There's a reason. When you started praise and worship, COVID was not a thing.
Oh no.
Okay.
What was that? Like, I wasn't
Now,
thinking about that.
COVID is a thing, and COVID has drastically affected life as we know it. Not just in hanging out with our friends at a new restaurant or going to see a play without having showing proof of vaccination, right? It is now, for a long time we could not worship corporately, and there are some churches that still do not worship corporately. There are still very, very, very log on to Zoom, here is your Zoom link, church is in an hour. How did you adjust from worship pre-pandemic to worship during the pandemic, and now worship where we're still in the pandemic, but we've
Mm.
congregated and it's like, I'm gonna come into church, but I need you to be like 4 seats away from me. So what was that transition like for you as a worship leader? How did it affect your presentation of worship? How did it affect church culture for you? And how did your relationship with God change?
Oh yeah. Oh man. I mean, so many people can say the difference between now and 2.5 years ago. Like, I mean, it'd be crazy to not say that things have definitely changed, even in the slightest of ways, to the greatest of ways. But when the pandemic first started, I had been the worship leader, one of the worship leaders, like I said, for the church that I sing at in the South Bronx, and I was singing there at that time, bi-weekly. So every 2 weeks, I would show up. I think it was probably like first and third Sundays. I would be on my post there. And then when the pandemic hit, it was this whole thing of trying to figure out if I would even be able to do it, because at the time, a lot of people, a lot of churches, they weren't up with the technology to be able to do something like full service virtually, so they were trying to figure out what they were even able to offer at the time. And then they figured out they could do Zoom, but then we know like you can't really sing in real time on Zoom with the musician because the lag with the sound and stuff like that, the
Mm-hmm.
delay and everything. So, it was determined that, I wasn't going to be able to do it. Um, and so for a while, I did not even lead worship. So I had this good period of time that I wasn't anyone's praise and worship leader. Um, and then sometimes, when you're not doing something, there can be a thought like, okay, so who am I now that I'm not doing this? You know?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that that didn't necessarily come to play in my mind then. But I know there was a time where I had left my childhood church that question did come up, or and also like would I be able to do it again if I came back to leading worship? Would I still be able to carry out um the position of leading worship? So um like I said, there were some time that I didn't even lead worship, but it allowed me to um do other things and to connect with God in a different way. Because when you're, you're at home and there is no service, there is no, put me in the key of A or whatever. I don't even know if that's the right key, but whatever. You have to you have to know who God is in your bedroom, who God is in your house, who God is with just you and him, or just you, him, and your family, your husband and your child. And are you able to maintain that relationship? And thanks being to God, like, we were able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that was just a time where you begin to you begin to see, with everything going on around you in the world, that's crazy. Because if you remember, during that time, it wasn't just the pandemic we were dealing with. We were dealing with all of this onslaught of police brutality,
Mm.
George Floyd, Breonna Taylor. Let's take it back, so we were dealing with all of these things, and it was like, if we are to believe God like we say that we do, then now is the time that we really have to show it. We really have to stick to our guns. When you don't know if, if you go outside, are you going to get sick? You know,
Or am I
if
going to
you
make it back home?
Yeah, or yeah, that too. Um so it was all of these things, during that time. But all of these things, um they have the ability to kind of give you that sense again, that grounding again. Like, what
Mm.
is this all about? you know um what is this faith that we say we have really all about? And it is about being able to lean and depend on God in these times, like we sing about. It's no longer just, a melody, a pretty song, something nice to say. It's something that, you really have to lean on God in those times. So that's what that time did for me. And it also gave me a time of just refreshing too, because maybe I needed to, sit back for a little bit, which was a good thing.
That was
Yeah.
something that worship leaders did not have. And I've oftentimes said it. We, as worship leaders, we were constantly going. We would go from one worship event to another, from one church to another. I don't like to use the word gig, but from one gig to another, we were constantly booked. And then the pandemic happened and nothing was opened, and we were forced to sit. And for a
Hmm.
lot of your
Hmm.
favorite worship leaders and for a lot of your favorite musicians, that was the first time since we started leading worship or taking ministry seriously that we actually rested.
Yeah.
So for the
So
first
true.
few weeks, it was like, I don't have to run around to 50 services. I can actually sleep.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I can actually examine, are we friends because we sing together, or are we friends
Oh.
because we built relationship with each other? Because a
Hmm.
lot of friendships died when we were not sharing them together. And it's not because we were never friends to begin with. We just weren't in each other's faces often enough to maintain a friendship. Worship leaders and their teams, sometimes they forgot to eat together outside of church. They only saw each other for rehearsal and service. And so we thought, that's my best friend, when in reality, no, that's just the friend that you see the most.
Yeah.
So am I
Wow.
actually your
Hmm.
friend? Can I invite you to my home to eat? When I'm having my children, am I going to be the first to know, or am I going to find out on social media? Or are we actually friends outside of ministry? So, like you said,
Hmm.
who am I now that I'm not doing this? What's our relationship now that we're not doing this?
Yeah. Yeah. And
When
those are all important questions. But go ahead, continue. I don't want to cut
no, no,
you
no.
off.
When George Floyd was murdered, when police brutality was at an all-time high. Could I go to you for encouragement, or are you just going to whitewash me and give me the God will work it out, insert
Yeah.
scripture here? And now I'm like,
Hmm.
well, I've heard you say this before and it sounded encouraging, but now I'm the one that needs to hear something different and you actually don't have it to give to me.
Hmm.
I'm not going to hold you as close as I need to, because
Yeah. Hmm.
I don't need to.
Yeah. It's in the rough times that we learn more about who we are, who God is, and who
Mhm.
everybody else is around us too. Like there is no fluff when the funk hits the fan. There's no fluff.
Mhm.
It's all stripped down and taken away. So you're gonna really know the real in those moments. So yeah, I definitely agree with you. And you know what was really cool about that time too was that time of sitting back and resting. Um, it gave me time to, start to work on some of my other endeavors with like my own music. Like I had been sitting on songs for, for
Which
years,
we're
and
going to
it
get
gave
to
me
that.
the,
But yes.
yeah, it gave me the push to do things like that. It also gave me a nudge to be active with things that were going on in regards to the protests and things like that. I had joined a march during that time, and I put down my mic at church, but I picked up my mic to sing the Negro anthem for a rally that was had too during that
Mm.
time. So like just different ways, like I said, that the spirit will move you to minister or to be available in a different way, to show up in a different light. So that time afforded me that as well. So I'm definitely thankful for that and have
Mm.
grown from that.
Absolutely. Okay. So, um, we know that, again, as worship leaders are always booked and busy. There are 3 seasons of a musician's year where they are the most, where they're the busiest, right? There is the week of Easter, so from Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday. If you're unfamiliar with Christendom, Palm Sunday is when Jesus rode in on a donkey, right? If you've
Yes.
never seen the joke, it's a whole joke. He was riding through Jerusalem on his donkey, right? And then the literally 7 days later, my man was just walking out of a tomb like, you thought you had me, but you didn't.
There you go. There you
Okay.
go.
So there's the Monday where everyone starts their 7 last words or 7 last sayings. There's Holy Wednesday. There's uh Holy Thursday, I'm sorry, there's Good Friday, Holy Sabbath, and Resurrection Sunday, right? These are like the 4 most busiest days of a singer's life. Then you have wedding season, which normally kicks off around this time of year when everyone's getting married and everyone wants you to sing at their wedding. And then there is the week of Christmas. So from about Thanksgiving to about New Year's, give or take, everyone and their grandmother's church is having a Christmas cantata, and everyone wants you to sing the same rendition of Oh Holy Night. Okay, how
Oh wow.
do you balance the busiest seasons of the year for a singer with self-care? How do you know when to say no? How do you know when to say yes? How do you know when to say I would love to, but I'm unavailable? uh, how do you justify when someone assumes that your understanding of unavailable and their understanding of unavailable is not the same? Where they think, well, you're not booked, therefore you're available. And you're like, no, 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 no. I'm not
Hmm.
booked and I am unavailable. The two can coexist together.
Oh
And
yes.
nothing
Oh
is on
yes.
my calendar and I'm not leaving the house. I am unavailable to whatever, and no amount of money can make me say yes. Right? Because you have people, we'll pay you double. I'm still unavailable, right? So
Right.
how do
Right.
you
Hmm.
handle balancing a busy season? How do you handle balancing uh 3 very hectic times of the year with your personal calendar, with your self-care or just plain up saying no, I don't want to?
Okay. So I think I just try to honor my boundaries, like, because outside of, leading worship, like I said, I'm also working on my own music, and then like I am someone's wife and mom, so I have to try my best to balance it out so that nothing is, kind of left for too long without being attended to. So, um, and to be honest, I used to be really bad at that. Like I used to be really bad at that, and I used to, just try to say yes to most things. But then you get burned out that way, and burnout is no fun. It
Mm-mm,
is it is not the trip that you want to take or the place
mm-mm,
that you want to be. And in those burnout seasons, I realized that I'm not my best self. um and that when you allow yourself to become too burnt out, you are not even able to show up to the places that you said yes to, um fully, and give the gift that you're supposed to even give. So it's like, you know what, let me do myself a favor and let me not even get on that rat race. Let me, say yes to what I feel that God is leading me to say yes to, and no to all the other things.
mm-hmm.
And to definitely take a moment and a step back to be like, there's a time. The Bible says there's a time and a season for everything, and guess what, there's a time and a season for rest too.
Oh,
So we I don't think this capitalist society that we're in, we take so much glorification in just running ourselves ragged, and
mm,
hustle and grind and all of that. And honestly, that's all of that is contrary to what God even wants us to do. I mean,
mm.
I may not be someone's favorite right now for saying that, but it's very true. Even in the way that we even, I'm sorry to say, even structure some of these services, and
Hello.
the and
Talk
and the
about it and go
worship.
there. Yes.
It's like you have to really ask yourself, like, why are we doing some of the things that we do? Is it just for tradition? And then also, if it is, have times changed some that maybe we don't need to be doing all that we're doing? Like, if no other time could teach us, I think it would have been, the pandemic. Some of these things we don't necessarily need to do. Sometimes I think we're doing them, um either for self glorification or to appease congregants, or what have
Mm-hmm.
you. Like, but at the end of the day, are we pleasing God? Are we showing up in ways, that he says, give not grudgingly nor of necessity? Like, that's really and that's not only when it comes to money, that's when it comes to,
Your gifts, your services, your
there
talent.
you go,
Yes.
your heart, the heart in which you do a thing. Like, that's really, what we need to be focused on. And for those of us who have families, like, that's the first ministry. Like, so are we, like we were talking earlier about the car, are we just going 0 to 100 and leaving our family behind? Like, is that something that we think that God is pleased with? I don't think so. So when I consider saying yes or no, I think about these things, because I think that those are important conversations that you ought to have with yourself. And also, that there needs to be a reserve that you just have for yourself. You need
Mm-hmm.
time sometimes just to hear your own self think.
Yes.
And this is not only for introverts, this is for anybody. Like, um we need to rest. Our bodies need to be at ease. Sometimes we carry so much even tension in our shoulders and our back, and it manifests into sicknesses and
Yes.
diseases, and
Yes.
and takes us out of here earlier than we need to be, cutting off sometimes part of our assignment that God gave us to do. No, I'm saying no to these things. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's how I try to do that. I try to keep those things in mind and govern myself accordingly, as we
Accordingly.
like to say.
That part. So here is one of my favorite questions when it comes to leading worship. As worship leaders, we have to be sensitive to the room, but as humans, we emote. We feel feelings, and our emotions emote. What
Yeah.
role do you feel emotions play in the worship service, or what should the worship leader be mindful of when it comes to the emotions of the congregation, their personal emotions? How do you lead even when you don't feel like it? When you woke up and you and your husband are just having a different variation of the same fight for the fourth time this week.
Oh
Um,
my. Oh
your
my.
child did not feel like putting on their shoe today, or they're throwing a temper tantrum because you put on the left shoe first and not the right shoe, and their
Hmm.
whole day is just
Because it
gone
matters.
upside
That
down
matters.
because it
Hmm.
matters that their left shoe goes on before their right shoe, and now they're mad.
Yes.
And you would
Hmm.
have to grab a mic and you're like, I don't feel like leading no one into nothing. I
Hmm.
want to sit and I want you to sing to me.
Oh
but
yeah.
but you can't do that, right? So what
Mhm.
role does the emotions play in the worship service?
The emotions. Okay, so here's the thing. Your emotions, they're just information about what is happening like internally with you, but they're not facts. Like I could feel like this day is a good for nothing day. Why even, get up to do anything or whatever? Like the day is ruined. Is the day really ruined though? Is it? Is it though? Is it not? This is the day that the Lord has made. I will rejoice and be glad in it. So like I try to check my emotions and weigh it against the word of God and weigh it against my assignment. Um, because even if the day started terribly, that doesn't mean it has to end that way either, you know. Um, the Bible speaks about for us not to be ignorant of the devil's devices. He
Mm-hmm.
uses our feelings and emotions all the time against us if we let him. I always say, like, I joke sometimes, but I'm really serious. I would say like the devil will make a fool out of you if you let him. He
Mm-hmm.
really will, but we don't have to let him. We're not ignorant of his devices. We know that sometimes he's gonna try to throw that monkey wrench right before it's time to get ready for church and service. Like that's something that's kind of commonplace that he does. So we just have to, you check in with your feelings. You figure out where you're at. Um, and then you try to get in tune with God, like God, like I'm really not feeling it. I don't know if I have it. But even like the word says, even in our weaknesses, his strength is made perfect. Like so when you don't have it, that's fine. Give it to God, but he has it. He has it for you. It's
Mm-hmm.
available to you to access. So yeah, emotions, they're information. And it could be very real for that moment, but it's a moment. It's not
Mm-hmm.
it's not from everlasting to everlasting. Like that, no, that's God. So so like we'll be okay. We can get through the service. It'll be all right. And then sometimes in our going, in our doing, he fills us up. Like the emotions begin to change and they change into joy and they change into peace. There's a release oftentimes that happens in worship,
Mm.
so and of course the devil doesn't want us to access that, but we press in and God gives us what we need in those moments as well.
That was good. Your emotions are temporary. That it's just a moment. You're angry for 2 seconds. Don't let the one thing that made you angry for 2 seconds dictate the rest of your day.
Hmm.
You still have a
Yeah.
whole day to be unangry.
There you go. You still do. You still trust me. You still do. Yeah.
All right. So here is another question, which is gonna uh gently segue from like the worship side to the business side. We are worship leaders. We are not free
Okay.
laborers.
Oh,
I
my.
know my worth. I add tax.
Mm. Good girl. Good girl.
Yeah. Unfortunately, some people don't like that. They think that you should serve for free.
Mm-hmm.
They feel like um, they should not have to pay you your worth. They feel like, as worship leaders, we are to render our service, but they never ask the accountant to come and manage the books of the church for free just because they're the accountant.
Mm-hmm.
Pastors get paid.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in some churches, the trustee board gets a stipend. Um, the custodian at the Department of Education gets paid. Why are we not compensating them? But somehow in church culture, we honor and respect everyone else except for the worship leader when it comes to compensation. So,
Mm.
what are your thoughts on compensation within a church space? Um, and for those that are in a congregation that will not pay them, and they decide to receive compensation outside of the church, like doing BGVs for secular artists, or singing in a jazz club, right? Or for some of us who went to school and have student loans to pay back, right? We have, I cannot tell Sally Mae, hi. I'm so sorry, but I served unto the Lord and I got a handshake and a chicken sandwich. That is not going to pay my bills, right? The
It
phone that you
is
called me on
not.
is attached to
Mm-hmm.
a service provider, and if they don't get their money, you will not be able to call me, right? So
Right.
how do you navigate or explain that as a worship leader or as someone who is serving here, I am deserving of compensation? And what do you say to the person who's like, well, if I serve here for free, don't get upset with me when I go in the world and get compensated double what you wouldn't even pay me for?
Okay, here's the thing. I would say that both mindsets or both hearts, maybe both heart postures are probably a little bit flawed. Um,
Okay.
Here's the thing. The laborer is absolutely worthy of their hire. Absolutely. Like it's in the word. They're like, why are we arguing this? Um, and compensation helps to show appreciation as well. Like you said, if everyone else is being given something, why wouldn't we want to do that for the worship leader? Why would, even if we as a congregation are not able to do it in the moment, why wouldn't that be the goal or the aim to do that? It's not nice when everyone else is constantly being given gifts and the worship leader is to go without, you know. And I think that can open the door for a heart posture where that leader is now saying, well, don't be mad if I, and now that puts that person, that causes that person to maybe, and I'm not saying, hear me what I'm saying. I'm not saying going to do other things outside of church is innately bad. I'm not, maybe other people would think that. I'm not of that mindset. Um, but I think it also depends on what you're doing when you go outside as well. Um, that can determine, whether,
Mhm.
you should do it or you shouldn't. But I think when churches just have this mind frame of we will not and we will never and we won't, and you shouldn't ever think that you will ever get, like, that's a wrong heart posture to me. Like, I wouldn't ever want to do anyone like that. Like I said, I think the goal should be able to get to a place where you can do something like that. And I'm sorry, can you hear me? Oh,
I can
okay.
hear you. You're good. You're good.
Okay. On my end, the sound went out slightly, but yeah, I think the goal should be to get to a place where you can offer a worship leader something as a thank you. Like there's so much that goes into leading worship that is beyond just the 15-20 minutes that
That
we're
you
given on a
experience.
Sunday
Yep.
morning. There is so much. There is the spiritual warfare that you go through in the week, that you fight,
Whew.
that sometimes you even fight, like we were talking about just moments ago, on Sunday morning, to show up and to push past those emotions that we were talking about. Like that's what's going on and happening. There's the rehearsal that you have to go through to learn the songs. And even now, as things are, you know songwriting has become more complex depending on the genre. So sometimes you have to remember so many words to so many different songs. There's a lot, and even in the picking of the songs, you don't want to sing the same constant, 5 songs in a rotation every time. So you have to be in you have to do your research, your homework about what songs are current, that you can draw from and you think that would be good for the congregation. Like there's so
Mhm.
much that goes into it. So um I think if people really honored that and really saw beyond just those few moments that you experience in the worship service itself, then they would I don't think that they would have such an argument um in wanting to compensate worship leaders. and
Mhm.
and honestly, when there is no leader, when there is no singing, you feel the difference.
Mhm.
Service is different. So I think that that should always be the goal, that we as a congregation, we as a church, we want to get to the point that we can do this. So it doesn't, like I said, lead the worship leader to a place where they feel like their back is against the wall and this is the only way that I can feed my family. And then people will jive and say, well, get a real job and what have you. Like, I have a quote unquote real job. I work a 9 to 5, but as the cost of living keeps going up and up, and like gas prices or whatever to get to service on time and things like that, like there should be some type of a thank you for that. And also, like, you want the person that's before you to look a certain way, to be presentable, and all of that costs too. Like if I sit in the service in the back pew, I don't necessarily have to look as polished and cleaned up as if I'm in front of,
The
the whole
congregation.
congregation. So you have to look a certain way and dress a certain way. And that means you have to buy certain clothing or what have you. So all of those things should, kind of, be factored in, I'll say. And then, like I said, the heart posture of the person, the worship leader now, who's saying, well, don't be mad at, I think that that's a little flawed too. We don't ever want to get to a point where that's where we function from, you know um yeah, I think that can be tricky too.
So, how do you market yourself? Because music is still a business, right?
Right.
So, going in the studio to record the song is extremely expensive. It is not cheap. You have to get
Absolutely.
studio time, you have to
Oh
hire
yeah.
BGVs, you have to go in multiple times to do multiple edits. You make this money back by going on tour, right? So Beyonce might spend $50,000 cutting the record. She has to make that money back to break even and then profit so that she can pay her security, pay her dancers, pay her musicians, all of that, right? So you
Mhm.
have to market yourself. So what
Yeah.
does marketing for you look like, being that you have a single? Right? You want people to buy your single, right? We don't just record music for fun. If I do a poll right now, most of you, if not all of you, listen to music on your way to work. So music plays an important role of your life. Somebody had to cut the record, right?
Mhm.
So how do you market yourself so that the hard work that you did in the studio didn't put you in the hole and keep you in the hole, and you actually made that money back?
Yeah, that is a good question, and I'm still sorting it out. I just released I just started to release music last year. So all of this is fairly new to me. I'm still trying to learn the ropes of it. Um, but what I do know is that you have to even set aside a portion of your budget for marketing. That's one thing. Um, and just try to put your best foot forward, and to try to invest in yourself wherever and however you can, um even down from things like, how your cover art looks.
Mm,
I try to be very in the two singles that I released. The first one, Please Don't Go, last year, and the most recent one, just in March, Dear God. Like, I try to be really intentional about making that cover art kind of stand out and pop, and just, express who I am, and be very like artistic, because we're in a very visual world.
mhm.
So how you see something is, what you might consider the substance of it. So if it looks a certain kind of way that's not that great, you might want to pass on it. But if it kind of catches your eye, you might want to give it a second look. So, just putting in, money for that, to kind of get it to look, polished and neat. That's one thing. Um, the other thing was, recently I did a bit of marketing with Gospel Music Buzz, on some, just some kind of, advertisement for the single, and
Mhm.
graphic work that was done in excellence, as well. So just, trying to put money aside from that, and just seeing the value in doing that, and not doing everything yourself, knowing when to do what you can do on your own, but then when to say, okay, my
But
dollars
to
and cents
outsource
need
it.
to go to the pros who know how to do this well,
Mhm.
and right. So, those are just, small little ways, and even trying to get playlists on, different playlists. I'm still trying to work on that, to be honest. I don't know that much about it, but, just, and also, what I have been doing is also trying to do artist development, just overall, like, investing in myself, because I know the importance of it.
Mhm. All right. So we're almost winding down.
Okay.
Can you tell me what is your favorite song for this season and why?
Okay. Um, Favorite song for the season, and it might sound a little weird, but right now, my favorite song, I'm gonna go right back to my notes real quick. Yeah, it's called Good Now. My favorite song for this season is called Good Now. It's by Doe. It's on her new album, the Clarity album. So she
Mhm.
has a song called Good Now, and it's kind of like which is weird. I'm gonna say it sounds weird coming from me, because like, I'm married, and this song kind of sounds a little bit like it was based on a breakup. Yeah, but the lyrics, the beginning of the chorus, it says, "I held up when I fell down, struggled, but I made it here somehow." And that like really,
Mm.
and then she goes on to say, "Broke up, but I rebound. I ain't tripping about it. I'm good now," basically. And those lyrics, like, they really move me, because it was like, if you go back to the first line, I held up when I fell down. Like, I
Mhm.
was able to hold everything together when I fell down. What does that mean? Like, when I fell down, I
Mhm.
got to my lowest, And also when I fell down on my knees and was like, God, that's the way that I was able to hold it together. And for me, that in this season, like that means so much because that truly is my testimony. Like that's how I've been able to maintain, like in
Mm.
between the last 2020 and even before that 2019 was a terrible year for me.
Ooh.
Terrible. And that's how I held up. I held up. Like I did break down, but I struggled, but somehow, I made it and I'm here now basically. So that song, like, it is really doing it for me right now.
All right. Well, you have a single out. Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm going to put the picture up because oh no, where'd it go? I did all the work to get
Okay.
it so that it could pop up on the screen. Oh, found it. Okay.
Okay.
So this is your new
Oh,
single.
yeah, that is.
It is called Dare God. Can
Mm-hmm.
you tell us a little bit about the song, where the inspiration came from, uh, the intended audience, and then can you sing your favorite part of the song?
Okay. All right. So the inspiration for this song was and is like my life. Um, there were so many moments in my life because, as beautiful as parts of my life have been, there have absolutely been some very dark and hard moments that I had to um overcome. And this song was like a compilation of a lot of conversations and prayers that I had with God. And I was like, God, I don't know what's going on, but I need to know that you're listening. Like I've heard that you are watching, but now, like right now, I need to know that. Like I really need to know that. So that's basically what this song is all about. There's a part of the song that says, Heaven, are you listening? I heard
Mm,
that you were watching, but I need to know. Um so yeah, that song is all about that. And then the audience is, I feel like I am, and I talked about this recently, but I feel like the type of artist that I am is like an artist that's a bridge.
mm,
I feel like the way that God has designed my experiences is to be that. So, I've had tons of experience being a worship leader at church, and so I feel like I can resonate with, the people of God. But I also feel like he's given me this ability to be transparent and to talk about some really real things in my personal music that reflects my experiences in my personal life that can reach others who are not necessarily uh, a church goer. Um, so I feel like this song is geared to both those audiences.
mm,
I'm sure for listeners that are listening now, there has been times in your life where, you wondered if, or you wondered what God was up to, what he was doing. And like, that certain things weren't necessarily matching up in your life with what you heard on a Sunday morning being preached of this is going to be your best year, all that kind of stuff. And then I'm sure that there have been even people who don't necessarily go to church, but they heard, grandma talk about God.
mm,
And right now, like, life ain't panning out to be what they want it to be. And they need to know, God, are you listening to me when I'm crying at night, when these tears are dropping on the pillow? Like,
mm.
so I think that this song can speak to both audiences.
All right. Now, can you sing a little bit of it for the people?
Okay, okay, okay. All right, so let's see. Let me see. One of my favorite parts. I heard it said the earth has no sorrow, heaven cannot heal. And in the hours of morning time, Joy will be revealed, and they say faith is the substance of things hoped for, evidence of things not seen. So I'm gonna try to just hold on despite the things I see. Cause God, your ways are not my ways, your thoughts are not like mine. But while I'm here down on my knees, I wanna know you're on the line. And then it goes into the chorus, but that's one of my favorite parts of the song.
Ooh. Okay, so where can people find you and where can people buy the music?
Okay, so folks, thank you for listening so far. I pray that everything that we said blesses you today. But if you want to keep up with me, you can find me pretty much everywhere, Instagram, Facebook, at Diane Malloy Music. So it's just my first and last name with music on the end. And as far as streaming and buying the song, you can find it anywhere digitally. Apple Music, iTunes, Amazon, Spotify, all those places that you go to listen to some of your favorite artists. You can hear this song as well as another song called Please Don't Go There.
All right, so you all heard it. Please, we know that artists get their money by streams, so play it over and over and over again. It's okay. She won't mind. She needs to catch
I
her cold.
won't. I won't.
Most important, we pray that the song blesses you. For those that
Absolutely.
tuned in and hung out with us so far, thank you. We greatly, greatly, greatly appreciate learning more about Diane, hanging out with us, talking all things worship, all things music, but more importantly, all things God. We pray that you were blessed, and we pray that God was pleased. Again, to stay up to date with Diane, her Facebook and her IG handle is tagged in the comments and shared on the screen. If you want to stay in touch with Love More Music, know where to find me. Love More Music on IG. Um, and then for the upcoming events for the worship tour, it kicks off June 11th. The schedule will go out in about 2 weeks or so once all of the behind the scenes details have been confirmed. But we are going on tour. And most importantly, if you want to stay up to date, you can text update to 718-808. Oh, crap. As soon as I started saying the number, I forgot it.
It
Oh,
happens.
happens all the time. And it happens when I least expect it. Okay. 718-808-8361. You're going to text update to 718-808-8361 for all of the new events that are coming out, the tour that's coming out, and new people that we will be interviewing. You'll catch it there. But for promotions, for discounts, and for coupons, I need your email address because that's only going out via email. Again, thank you so much for your time, and I will see you again in 2 weeks. Bye.